Okay, so our first question from yesterday was in the Koseres. Okay, he says, Yesh bichlal and shtei mitzvos asay, Rishona lilmod Torah. The problem is that we also did yesterday the Sefer Mitzvos and the Minyan Mitzvos, and in both of those places, he says the mitzvah is two things. It's lilamed and lilmod. Okay. And it seems like lilamed is the primary thing. So in the Koseres, why does he omit lilamed? Would have been very easy to just write one more word. And why, if he's going to only pick one, why does he pick lilmod instead of lilamed? Especially given the fact that the first part of the first perek is all about teaching, not about learning. So that's one question, and that's going to be a general question.
Where are you seeing lilmod? Lilamed?
Where am I seeing lilamed?
No, where are you seeing he admitted this?
In the Koseres, yeah. Because, for example, if you look in the, I don't have this in the, oh, I do have it in the packet. Look, for example, on the mitzvos asay on the second page or whatever. So that's in the beginning of the Mishnah Torah, and look at Yod Aleph, lilmod Torah ulalamda, okay. Right? So and the same thing in the Sefer Mitzvos, which was on the page before, lilmod chachmas Torah ulalamda, v'zo nikra Talmud Torah. So he mentions them both, and he says that that's what Talmud Torah is called. So now in the Koseres, he only says that's no the it's at the top of the page. Oh, it doesn't have a page number. Hilchos Talmud Torah at the very top, and the Koseres is right beneath that. Yesh bichlal and shtei mitzvos asay Rishona lilmod Torah. So that's one question that we have: is why does he not say lilamed? Second question we have is on the first halacha, Nashim v'avadim peturim mitalmud Torah, which makes sense, even though he doesn't say the reason why. Then aval katan aviv chayav lalamdo Torah. So the problem is when he says aval katan. First of all, we were wondering why does he even have to mention a katan if a katan is patur from all the mitzvos? He shouldn't even have to mention the katan. But then once he mentions it, you see he mentions it as an object, not as a subject. He says katan. Not you expect him to say katan is obligated to learn, but no, he says katan, a father is obligated to teach him. So it just makes the sentence incongruous that nashim vavadim peturim mitalmud Torah seems to be as subjects. They are exempt from learning and teaching Torah. Then he switches katan, a father is obligated to teach him Torah. And now what we're doing is we're just looking through the rest of the Mishnah Torah, not all of them, but looking through the rest of the Mishnah Torah to see if there's like a pattern in how he generally frames the katan. You find anything, Chaim?
I think I'm in the wrong place.
Oh, okay. Right. So okay. So just to repeat. So Kriya Shema Dalet Aleph Nashim Vavadim Uktanim B'Turim Talmud Torah Kriya Shema. Right. So that makes it sound like he does talk about katanim, but then he says. But we teach kids to read it in its time. Okay, but then Sefer in Hilchos Tefillah, I think he does not mention katanim. Right, halacha aleph in. Oh, sorry, I don't have that in there. I should get you another Mishnah also. Here, actually, this one. Okay, I already have one here. Yeah. By shofar, right? Yeah. So just to read here with the in tefillah, after talking about how tefillah is once a day, he says ulefikach nashim v'vadim chayavim b'tefillah lefishi mitzvos say shelo hazman grama. Does not mention chinuch. Okay. Next one would be in tefillin, right? Let's see if he says katanim by tefillin. Oh, hold on just a second here. I think he does mention it by tefillin. Hold on, because I think he talks about once a katan. Yeah, halacha daled yud gimel in Hilchos tefillin mezuzah v'sefer Torah. If you get the page, you can say it for. Yeah, daled yud gimel. Okay, yeah. So yeah, it's interesting here, right? Kol ha-pater mikriya shema. Pater min hatfilin. So you would think at that point he does not need to mention a katan. Yeah, perek dal halacha yud gimel. 118, yeah. Katan shiodea lishmor tefilav Aviv lokeach lo tefillin kedei l'chancha b'mitzvos. So a katan who knows how to guard his tefillin, which I assume means like, I don't know if this is an unwarranted assumption. I assume that means to like guard himself from like flatulence, or does it literally mean to protect your tefillin?
Oh,
Oh, hello, Malcolm. No, it means to guard your tefillin. Yeah, because in the previous halakha he talks about guarding them, I think. Yeah. Okay. So basically, if the kid can be responsible enough for tefillin, then the father should buy him tefillin in order to educate him in mitzvahs. I always wonder that, by the way, with seems like certainly Ashkenazi convention is kids don't start putting on tefillin until like shortly before the bar mitzvah, right? Or not shortly,
I
but
think he's not a temporary master
Mhm.
when
That's also true, right? That's a factor that the Rambam doesn't really.
comes from that.
That's a good point, right? That's kind of why I thought it was about the flatulence thing, Okay, so that's by tefillin. Then I assume mezuzah he's not going to mention. Oh, he does. Look at that in same section. Perek halacha yud. Hakol chayavin b'mezuzah afilu nashin v'avadim u'mechanchin es haktanim lasos mezuzah levatehen. For their houses, like all these kids with their real estate, yeah. Okay, yeah, but that's fine. Like, what in what situation are you gonna like? Did kids have houses back then? Like, weird, right? In what situation is a kid gonna have a house that doesn't already have a mezuzah? Okay, that's fine. Unless he mentions about Sefer Torah, but I doubt he does. Yeah, he does not do it for that. And then tzitzis. Wait, what about? Oh yeah, is it tzitzis next? Yeah, you're right. Tzitzis. I think he will mention it. Katan. He says in Gimel Yud in tzitzis. Oh, sorry, Gimel Tes in the correct numbering, I think. Nashim Vavanim.
Yeah.
Yeah, Peturim min tzitzis min Torah. Umidivrei Chachamim. That's weird. He says min Torah. Okay, fine. Right? No. Umidivrei Chachamim. It's also weird. He says midivrei Chachamim, because usually he says. Well, usually he says midivrei sofrim, right? I know there's a difference in the wrong between midivrei or midrabanan. Yeah. Shekol katan shiodel his atef chayev betzitzis kedei l'chancha b'mitzvos. Right. Oh, then he says v'nashim vavanim shiratu lisata betzitzis means atfin below bracha. V'chein sharkol mitzvos. Okay, fine. So that might be why he said minator. I think it's is it a machlokus whether it's beged ish? Is that a machlokus we're talking?
Like, isn't that thing which depends on society?
Yeah, I mean, especially back. Well, I don't know for sure, but it does. It could be the fact that a garment with tzitzis is like a male garment in the sense that the Torah obligates males and doesn't obligate women. I mean, you're right. In terms of the halachos of beged ish and beged isha, it goes by the style of the society, which would explain why women wouldn't put on a tallis, because a tallis is definitely a beged ish.
Why?
Because women don't wear talisin.
Well, if they started doing so?
If they start doing so, then it would change, but they don't do so, which is the whole question of beged ish, like at what point does it change, Yeah.
And look how, when you count just Jewish society or all types
Mhm. There's another question. Okay, but then he says, okay, fine. So that's another katan thing. So far, my theory is substantiated, right? That he mentions katanim only in the context of chinuch, right? Let's just do the rest of the ones in Sefer Ava because there's not that many. In brachos, he says, in Hilchos brachos perek hey halach aleph. Nashim vavadim chayavim bebirkas hamazon. V'safek yish b'davar imhi perek hey halach aleph.
137.
Nashim vavadim chayavim bebirkas hamazon. V'safek yish b'davar imhim chayavim min Torah. L'fi she'ein kavul lazman o einan chayav min Torah. So there's a machlokus, or it's a suffix whether women and servants are obligated in Torah because it's not time bound, or if they are. Sorry, they're obligated because it's not time bound, or if they are not obligated from the Torah. Funny, it doesn't say why. Don't they say that the reason why is because it says Eretz Kamda? No, I mean the land that you gave us, or is it because of the bris in Torah? I mean, it mentions bris, right? And they're not in in the second bracha.
uh,
Yeah, I forgot what if that's halachos, but then he says "Fikach ein motziin es hagdolim midei chavasim aval katanim chayavim bepikas mazim midivrei sofrim kedei lachancham b'mitzvos."
I don't understand that.
Yeah. So, but one thing we're seeing from here, though, is that he has no problem saying that a katan is chayav, but in Talmud Torah, he doesn't say the katan is chayav. He says the av is chayav to teach his kid. Yeah.
Why is it? Isn't it the same?
But it seems to say.
Just want to hear what comments came first. Yeah.
I have an explanation.
Yeah.
And over here, all of it is recovered.
Right.
Well, then it's not
Right. It's mina Torah. Right. Right. But I guess the question, I mean, I guess maybe we'll see this.
The sun's not quiet.
Right. The sun is not chayav at all. Right. In Talmud Torah. Right.
That the way that the water is formulated.
Yeah.
Is that the sun is fire somehow? That.
Well, I think we will see that later on today. So about what would be that case, but he doesn't use the lashon katan. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually have that Myra as it didn't work.
Okay. All right. So that we've now become enlightened about the pattern here, right? And there's more in Zmanim. Yeah. Yeah. You want to just read it because you got it there?
And it doesn't mention that you should do it.
Interesting. So yeah, I think he does by lulav. While we're here, because I think katan hidei lananea. That's I feel like I read that over sukkahs. Yeah. Oh, by the way, it is weird. Yeah, with the shofar, it's weird that we don't. I mean, that would be very easy. You would expect him to say aval katan, mevin o so. Yeah, you expect him to say by katan that you bring him to hear the shofar kedei lachancho b'mitzvos, right? It's a very easy thing to do, right? I mean, what's easier chinuch than that? And you see people do it. Not that that's a question on the Rambam, but people.
We know that you're supposed to, talk about it later on Shabbos.
Mm-hmm.
You let it go from on the platform on Shabbos.
Right. That's interesting.
There's a whole other
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't mention the chinuch right away because you mentioned it later.
Right. Yeah. In Beis, you're talking about Beis Zayin with Shabbos? Or sorry. On actual in.
On it after.
Right. Oh, okay, interesting. Okay, yeah.
I'll find that later.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, and then sukkah, the one you mentioned, is in Hey Tesvav. Oh, sorry, that's sukkah katana. That sounds when I do a search. Vav Aleph Nashim Avadim Uktan Paturim in sukkah. Tumtum and Drognus Chayav Misafek Lachem Mishi Chetzio Evet V'Chetzio Ben Chorin Chayav Katan She'inot Tzarech Le'imo Shu Keben Chamesh Keben Sheish. So there's another one that a katan who doesn't need his mother, who's like 5 or 6. It's funny he mentions that, right? I guess he holds by Piaget's stages of development. Is obligated in sukkah midivrei sofrim in order to educate him in mitzvos. Yeah. Okay, lananea in Zion Yud Tes. Kol shechayav b'shofar v'sukkah chayav b'netilas lulav. Chol patrim mishofar v'sukkah patrim milulav. That, by the way, that I spent some time on sukkahs trying to think about that. Why does he phrase it that way? Right. In perek Zion halacha Yud Tes. Right. Why is the hischayvus in shofar at all related to the one in lulav or even sukkah? And this is, I guess, a question on why he groups them together in the first place. Shofar, sukkah, lulav. But I didn't get an answer. Katan hayodei lananea chayav b'lulav midivrei sofrim kedei lachancho b'mitzvos. Right. Yeah.
It does sound like the way the Rambam is saying that a lot of is the way it's formulated was making the son obligated. Right. It's making the son obligated, but the father seems to be the one that the action is directed to in many of the cases, right? Right. But yeah. I'm saying right, the son has no responsibility seemingly at this point, right? Oh, so okay, so that's our question. Okay, so did this change our question?
Nashim v'vanim p'turim mitalmud Torah, aval katan aviv chayav l'lamdo Torah. So the question basically now is just, why is the katan not obligated? You should say like this: Nashim v'vanim p'turim mitalmud Torah, aval katan chayav b'talmud Torah midivrei sofrim kedei lechancho b'mitzvos. Then it would be the same as all the other formulations. Not katan aval katan aviv chayav l'lamdo Torah. But the funny thing is that here you have a pasuk for it, whereas you don't have a pasuk for any other chinuch thing, right? So maybe he's formulating it this way because this is actually, I mean, maybe you said this. This is actually the father's deoraisa obligation in Talmud Torah is from this pasuk. Shnemar v'limadatem l'sam es b'nechem l'daber bam. You don't have like, you know, for tzitzis, right? You know that the father's obligated to wrap his son in tzitzis. Yeah, so let's just look up that pasuk in context. Devarim Yud Aleph Yotes. So it's obviously in Krishma. I know we know the context, but if you want to see it in this framework here. Yeah, so this is in.
General thing, that's specific mitzvah.
I mean, it sounds like a general thing, right? But I guess that's going to get to a question of how they structured the mitzvah of chinuch, of like, did they structure a specific chiyuv d'Rabbanan for each mitzvah, for each katan, you know, or did they have a general thing of like a katan is chayav midivrei sofrim in all mitzvahs to say, you know, and he's just spelling it out for each one. I don't know. Yes. Yeah.
I found
In Shabbos? Oh yeah. Oh, that's the one I thought you were talking about. Yeah. Hold on just a second. Perek Sheni halacha zayin. Sorry, I'm just doing this the lazy way. Okay, yeah, here we go. Yeah, tinokos, that one. Yeah. Tinokos shelo higiyun l'chinuch. Oh, so this is answering my question that why didn't he mention any involvement of the tinokos earlier in the halacha, right? So the tinokos who have not reached the age of chinuch, im akvin osan militkoa b'Shabbos she'ena yom tov shel Rosh Hashanah kedei l'shiyilmadu. That's weird. We don't prevent them from playing on a Shabbos which is not yom tov of Rosh Hashanah in order that they learn. So he's talking about like a Shabbos in February, right? Umuter lagadol his asek imahen kedei l'lamdam. Yom Tov, it's mutar for gadol to involve himself with them in order to teach them on Yom Tov. Bein katan shehigia l'chinuch, bein katan lo higia l'chinuch, shetkia ein isur ela b'mishum shavos. Such a bizarre halacha.
Right.
It's in 2:7 in Shofar, right? So the weird thing, let's just state the weirdness, right? So the weirdness is in 2:1, he just says katan is pater, doesn't mention a word about chinuch. Okay, then. He does mention in 2:2 that if you're not chayav, you can't be motzi anyone else. So he mentions katan there. Okay, okay, that's fine. And then in 2:7, he talks about a warped anti-chinuch, or not anti, non-chinuch chinuch. 2:7 in Shofar. That kids who have not reached the age of chinuch, we don't prevent them from playing on a Shabbos, which is not the Yom Tov Shel Rosh Hashanah. Which is a weird, like, surely that doesn't mean that we prevent them from doing it on Yom Tov that is Rosh Hashanah.
Well, why not?
It'd just be weird, like.
And maybe we're stupid because they might think it's okay to do it now.
But it is okay to do it then for them. It's just they can't be mostly anyone, but. And don't we want chinuch? Like, wouldn't that be the greatest chinuch well, the greatest chinuch is taking them to hear shofar on Rosh Hashanah. But if they want to blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah, that's also chinuch, you know? You should say, katan hayodea litkoa.
Consider rebelling against the chachamim.
How so?
Because the chachamim specifically went out of their way to command people to be mevatel d'oraisa because they're concerned that people would carry on.
No.
If you allow them to do it on Shabbos to think, people might think, it's okay to do shofar on Shabbos because it actually is okay.
Wait, yeah. So,
but then they'll accidentally.
Well, let me make sure I get the facts right. So you're saying this is on Shabbos, Rosh Hashanah Shechalios b'Shabbos? She'ena Yom Tov Shel Rosh Hashanah. Meaning, if it was a Shabbos that was a Yom Tov for Rosh Hashanah, then I can understand what you're saying.
So that's why I'm saying specifically now that on Shabbos or short time you have to be super careful because you'll realize that you actually or basically should be doing shofar on that Shabbos and they'll make mistakes.
Okay, so in other words, so if they are blowing shofar on a Shabbos in February, no one's going to infer from there that you can blow shofar on Shabbos, Rosh Hashanah, right? That's what you're saying? I hear that argument. Yeah, I hear that argument.
Yeah, well, since you really sort of should be doing that, therefore people will stop and then making the same.
Yeah, so that explains why he specifies it to the Shabbos. What it doesn't explain is why he doesn't mention earlier why he doesn't say a word about chinuch here. It says kadesh yilmadu, but that sounds like in order that they'll learn how to blow shofar, not that they'll get chinuch and mitzvos. It's bizarre. Yeah. Okay, then that's fine. Okay, this is, I mean, look, this is Rambam bekius. That was Rambam bekius, So okay, let's get back to our topic at hand. Oh, so we were just looking this up in context in the Kriya Shema. Limartim osam espinechem, right? So that is in the context of the second paragraph of Kriya Shema, and the context is weird. I know it's not weird to us because we say it every day, but
if a child is Torah, can that be called chinuch and mitzvahs? Because since it is itself a mitzvah, maybe by definition it can't be chinuch.
then could you call any mitzvah chinuch? What do you mean? Since by definition it's called itself as a mitzvah? Maybe I just missed what you said.
And maybe you just blurry Torah. Since blurry Torah is, I guess, in itself, the thing you would be behind him in.
Okay, yeah, that's why. Okay, that's what I thought you were saying. Or were you going to say that? In other words, Talmud Torah is more fundamental than all the other mitzvos in a way, meaning that it's the thing. Chinuch in Torah, Talmud Torah is the thing that all chinuch and other mitzvos is based on. So you can be mechanech a kid in, like it'd be this is a very loose analogy. It would be like you can obligate a literate 7-year-old to read a certain book, but you can't obligate an illiterate kid to learn how to read. It's just an impossibility. The only way you can obligate him to learn how to read is to obligate someone else to teach him how to read. So same thing here, meaning you can obligate a kid who knows how to wave a lulav to do lulav, but you can't obligate a kid who doesn't know about lulav to do anything. A kid who doesn't know Torah, you have to have someone else teach him.
A parody that was in my head.
Okay. Right. So that I think that would make sense then, right? That's why the kid has not even a chiyuv of mitzvah yourself in that. Okay, that's good. So what I was about to say with the Kriya Shema is it's weird because first paragraph of Shema makes sense. Yichud Hashem, Avas Hashem, and then Yubahayu Hadvarim Ha'ele Asher Achim Mitzvah Hayom Al Levavecha, and then it says all the ways to remember those Devarim, which is Kriya Shema, Mezuzah, Talmud Torah, right? But in the second paragraph of Kriya Shema, it's strange because it warns against the Avodah Zarah, right? Hisham Elechem Pen Yiftel Levavchem, Assorted Avodatem Elohim Acharim Yishtach Avizalam, V'chara Afar Adonai B'chem Ve'atzar Es Hashemayim V'lo Yihiyeh Matar V'Hadma Lo Sitain Es Yivola V'Avodatem Mehirami Al Har Tzedva Asher Adonai Nosen Lechem. V'samtem Es Devarai Ele Al Levavchem Al Nafshem. You should place these words, meaning what? The words about Schar V'Onesh and like brachos and klalos? Yeah, right? Al Levavchem Al Nafshem Ukshartem Osam Los Al Yedchem V'Hayilot Tetvos Beineinechem. V'limadtem Osam Es Pnechem L'Daber Bam V'Shivdecha B'Veisacha B'Lechav Derech V'Jok B'Chav Necha. And mezuzah, right? So it sounds like the emphasis here, in other words, I think the thing I'm finding weird is that
when you know that Torah is coming from something that sounds really not this particular area.
Is that what is what bothering me? Hold on just one second.
The way I would read it without using that as much, like from
Yeah.
Also without that knowledge.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I just read this. I would assume when it says the amount of from it out of the book, it meant like the thing they were talking about right now.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that is the question I'm asking. Yeah, exactly. Meaning the thing it's talking about right now is basically the brachos on the klalos. that will come to us if we follow, if we're im shema tishma mitzvosai. It's not the mitzvosai itself. It's not all the words of Torah. It is the brachos and the klalos. And those are the words that you should place on your heart, and those are the words you should teach to your kids. Yeah. Right. So it's just a weird, it does not seem like it makes sense within the context.
Right. And it doesn't make sense to make it as hard for
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. The candidate for the source. Oh, let's look at the next one. Okay. Or we didn't finish the halacha yet. The ein ha'isha chayeves lelamed es bana. So a woman is not obligated to teach her son. Shekol hachayev lilmod chayev lelamed. And since he already said earlier that she's pater from Talmud Torah, which presumably means lilmod, right? Or includes lilmod. So she's pater from teaching. So the havmina there is that you could have it structured in a way where you're pater from learning, but you're obligated to teach. That also doesn't make sense, right? Be a strange setup. That's the havmina though, right?
Yeah.
You might think that she's pater from Talmud Torah, but she is chayav to teach her son.
Okay. Yeah, maybe if the son has to be taught him the father wrongs.
Yeah, right. Meaning maybe she would have to go out of her way to learn in order to teach, not because she's obligated to learn, but because her son has an obligation to be taught. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so this then there's a nafkamina then to this havmina, which is saying that an isha is never chayav to teach her son, even if you're in a situation where there's no father. Let's say you have in Hilchos Mila, or in mitzvahs Mila, you have the whole hierarchy of it's first the father's responsibility and it goes to Beis Din, Here though the woman is not obligated to teach her son no matter what. Okay. Next paragraph. Or are you thinking about something there? Okay, fine. All right. Kishem sha'adam chayav. Yeah.
Let's say for a reason, the son knows how to do X perfectly. Is there those kind of apply to him if he knows it?
If he knows Torah already?
I don't think he knows how to do he knows everything about it.
Yeah. I guess the question is going to be to what extent do you have to teach him to be yotzei or chiyuv? For example, we don't say that a 50-year-old man's 80-year-old father is still obligated to teach him. Presumably he discharges his obligation at some point. I'm pretty sure. I think we'll find out later in the Rambam. We'll find out later in the Rambam. Yeah.
Where you just say reach before we can.
You could say that, but I feel like there has to be some structure to the mitzvah. We'll see. Again, we're just starting it off. Okay, so kishem she'adam chayav lelamed es beno, kachu chayav lelamed es ben beno. Shneimar v'hudatam levanecha v'livnei vanecha. All right, so just like you have a chiyuv to teach your son, so too a man is obligated to teach his grandson. Okay. It's funny, by the way, that when I mentioned I was going through the Aruch HaShulchan on these also, and the Aruch HaShulchan says v'huadin ben bito, which the Rambam doesn't say that. I don't know if that means he doesn't hold it or what, but just ben beno. V'lo beno ben beno bilvad. Ella, well, I guess you would be included through this. Ella mitzvah al kol chacham v'chacham Yisrael l'lamed es kol ha'talmidim af al pi she'enan banav. So not just one's son and grandson alone, rather it's a mitzvah on each and every chacham in Israel to teach all the talmidim, even though they're not his children. Shneimar v'shina tam levanecha, as it is taught, you shall teach it sharply to your children. And from the Torah Baal Peh, then we learn your sons in this context refers to your talmidim. Talmidim kruim banim, because talmidim are called sons. Shneimar, as it says, veitu b'nei hanavim. The b'nei hanavim went out. So yesterday we asked, why doesn't he say Ella mitzvah al kol adam Yisrael l'lamed es kol talmidim, right? Why say al kol chacham v'chacham? Because the way he starts it off is when he says not every adam is obligated to teach his son, and not only his son but his grandson, and not only his grandson but all talmidim. That would make sense. Then he says he switches to chacham, so it sounds like the Amharitz is not obligated to teach the son of his friend. Yeah.
Well, is there what you call some? I guess the part saying that everyone's involved in every battle.
Right. Well, I think he is going to say that in perek vav.
Like, what was that?
or Zion, that every Talmud is anyone who learns from anyone is considered a Talmud. Yeah. Yeah, but did you hear my question about the Chacham thing?
Yeah, I think you're really correct.
Yeah.
It's saying that the people are not.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Right. So the weird thing about that though is then it's learned out from the same pasuk that the Rambam gets the mitzvah of Talmud Torah from in Sefer Mitzvos. Yeah. V'shin Talmud V'necha. Yeah, he quotes V'shin Talmud V'necha. That was one he darshan with both Sifres, right? Or
right.
Yeah. Yeah, and he also did Shinatam in the Minyan Mitzvos. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I would be right identity, but why is not using that?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, we didn't answer that. Right. So just to state the question again. So in the Sefer Mitzvos and in the Minyan Mitzvos, he says the source of the mitzvah of Talmud Torah is V'shinatam Levanecha. But here, the first pasuk he quotes is V'limad Osam. Now, that's not necessarily a contradiction, because you could say, I mean, it's the chiyuv to teach a katan on the father is from Limad Osam Espnechem, but mitzvahs Talmud Torah comes from V'shinatam Levanecha.
Right. Okay, maybe. I think maybe that's put on the back burner.
Yeah, well, we have a matir for putting it on the back burner, by the way, because the Rambam, even though he quoted V'shinatam Levanecha, he did say that there are many psukim that are the source of this mitzvah.
Right.
So it's not like you need one pasuk that's the primary thing. It's more of a question of presentation than like derivation.
Right, so should we become a person who can't teach Torah and be able to teach Torah into the Chacham?
You're answering the Chacham question, or you're answering the Shina Tam question?
I'm trying to see if I can do both. And
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing: you don't need to be a Chacham in order to be Makayim the mitzvah of an Av to teach the son, right?
Well, I like it. That just be a factor in getting it.
To be Chayav, yeah. Sorry.
Would that be a factor to say it just be a factor of the son being not limited?
Yeah, I mean, so then how does that relate back to what you said?
I guess I don't think it could be because that would create redundancy.
I mean, there is going to be a certain redundancy here in general, because when an Av has an obligation to teach his son, but then if the Av is a Chacham and the son is a Talmid, then he's also being Mekayim this V'shinan Tam Levanecha Elu Tamidecha. It's not a bad redundancy, but
Was there issue like Shina and Limud?
Yeah. So V'shinan Tam, the Rambam says, means to teach it sharply, so that if someone asks you a question, then you don't stumble, but you say it immediately. So it's a certain Shinan Tam has a certain implication of a standard of how well you teach it or know it. And then there's also V'shinan Tam. Rambam doesn't say this here, but Rashi, I think the famous Rashi on V'ahavta says it means like lashon of shana, of like repetition. Like you should repeat it many times. I think.
Sounds like a higher standard.
I think it's referring to the qualitative and quantitative standard, maybe. There's like it's sharp, and then it should be reviewed a lot. Whereas limud is just very broad, it seems.
Maybe just north you sort of by definition after the Chacham.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So that you're saying that why does he quote V'shinan Tam specifically for the Kol Chacham V'Chacham Yisrael, right?
She also has to by definition be a Chacham.
Right.
They also have to be a Chacham teacher, so therefore, by extension, they need to be a Chacham. Chacham needs to learn.
Right. Okay, I see what you're trying to do. Right. So in other words, you're saying, yeah, go ahead.
It's not just saying, oh, even if you can't do that standard, you can still do more standard for your actual something for yourself.
Right. So let's try that out as a structure. Right. So mitzvahs Talmud Torah is referring to the entire institution, not just the father and the son things, the entire institution. So which pasuk are you going to choose? You're going to choose the one that represents the highest standard of learning, and then the most all-encompassing thing in terms of who it involves. So it's going to be, so in other words, the highest standard being V'shinan Tam, and that is going to be the obligation for every Chacham to teach all Talmidim, and it's going to not just be limited to your son. That's the trying thing.
I guess it's that you should have to look because you have to be able to teach at Chacham level, which by extension means you have to become a Chacham.
Right.
Which sort of by extension means self-relation. Functionally, we just aren't, but the required culture is
Right. Yeah.
But then like Lew, then I guess Lew additionally goes to go. Although it's lower standard, I guess it's Lew. I guess Lew and not saying lower standard only applies to your son.
Yeah. I can get on board with that.
I
Yeah.
think I don't want that reminded me of a question that I don't know if he said that.
Sure.
I think it's hard, it's not about I find I think maybe nationally is something always hard, but
Yeah.
in our-
Yesterday I said that in many cases he does start with that
Yeah, but it doesn't seem like that in our like
when we went through everything. Yeah.
version,
Right. I mean, he started with, right. He delays it until later. I mean, it's a good question.
Also, it's actually, I think, with answering the question, I think that really better version of high version is not going to alpha,
Yeah.
and it's also on everyone.
Yeah.
I think you put that first, and then you put not going to alpha and acid,
Uh-huh.
and also written arguments and policy.
Right. So I'm going to reference something which I can't recall. In my first year in yeshiva, Rav Pesach had a theory about if you look through all the Rambams when he presents a mitzvah, there are sometimes when the Rambam starts off by introducing the mitzvah and its source. There are other times when the Rambam starts off by introducing the chefza, and then there are other times when the Rambam starts off with the people who are obligated. And he had a theory for some sense in that. Yeah, like Megillah, for example, the Rambam starts off with who's obligated, or then maybe he starts with the mitzvahs, Kriyas Megillah, Vonosa, mitzvah, whatever. That's a bad example. I don't remember now. By tefillah, he starts off with the mitzvah,
Right.
you know, or by vidui, he starts off with the mitzvah, you know. By sukkah, he starts off with the chefza, and by lulav, he starts with the chefza, and doesn't get to even mitzvahs. Yeshiva B'sukkah, you know, right? Yeah. So the answer to the question of why he starts it this way might really be more of a broader question on how the Rambam presents mitzvahs in general, which is a good question, but that would be quite an endeavor for us to look through.
Maybe in like 10 years.
Yeah. We need to do more bekius first. Yeah. Okay. So now we're on base 2, right? Which is the last one we did yesterday. Im Kain. Or did we do more than that? Yeah. Im kain lama nitzav al beno v'al ben beno. So once you have an obligation on all chachamim for all talmidim, and now everyone's going to be taken care of, why then are you commanded on your son and on your grandson separately? So that's lahakdim beno leben beno ben chavurah. That's to give precedence to your son over your grandson and your grandson over the son of your friend. Presumably this is precedence in terms of if you can only do one or, you know, at a time, right? Or if you don't have enough money. V'chayav liskor malamed lebeno lalamdo, and a person is obligated to hire a teacher for his son to teach him. Ve'ino chayav lalamed ben chaver el b'chinam, and he's not obligated to teach the. I know you explained it yesterday, Chaim, that it means that you explained that you're only obligated to. Meaning you're not obligated to teach him for free, right? Meaning you're not obligated to hire someone to teach your friend's son.
Yeah,
right?
Right.
If it's for free, yeah, okay, yeah, that's the way to read it. Yeah, I got tripped up on it yesterday.
So this is the Rambam not hold the problem with hiring, with paying, like I said, pay to pay him.
So he's going to get to that later on, and the Rambam's going to he's going to distinguish between Torah B'chsav and Torah B'al-Peh.
I don't
For that.
know why he's sort of not doing that in the Rambam.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's also a thing that like Rambam is very vehement about it, but they're heterim, you know, not from the Rambam, but yeah. Okay, Mishalo limdo aviv chayav lolamidas atmo mishiyakir. Someone who's this gets to what you were saying, Yosef. Mishalo limdo aviv, right? So what about if someone's father didn't teach him? So that's chayav lolamidas atmo mishiyakir. So he's obligated to teach himself once he recognizes it. Right, so he is obligated. It's not like the. I don't know if it's disproven. We'll finish it. We'll finish it, and we'll see. So it comes from a different pasuk, though.
Yeah.
You shall learn them and keep them to do them. So this is one I want to look up in context. 5:1 in Devarim. Oh, look at that. This is the Aseret Hadibros, or the preface to the restatement of the Aseret Dibros. And this is the beginning of Moshe Rabbeinu's second speech in Devarim or third speech? I think it's his second speech. Yeah, this is the second. Vayikra Moshe el kol Yisrael v'yomer aleim Shema Yisrael es hachukim v'es hamishpatim asher anochi dover be'oznechem hayom. So listen, Israel, to the chukim and the mishpatim that I speak in your ears today. Ulamadtem osam, and learn them. Ushmartem lasosam. So this is clearly teaching them about mitzvos. This is a good candidate for the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, right? For learning Torah, at least. And then he says, Adashem Elokeinu karisim ana bris b'chorev, lo asavosechem, avseinu b'koraz, etc. And he goes to the source differos. Yeah. So that's the source for you to learn it yourself, if your father doesn't teach you.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, it's a practical thing, right? But so my question is, does this shed light on the type of Talmud Torah we've been talking about up until now, which is learning in order to do, and this is just the only source that you need someone else, that this is the only a source for people whose fathers didn't do it?
Oh, no.
The other way would be that the type of teaching that we were talking about before is more than just for practical stuff. It has some other character to it or some other scope to it, as we're going to see later on when he says what you actually have to teach your kids. Right, definitely further than that. Yeah. Right. V'chein ata mote b'chol makom she'Talmud kodem. Oh, we supported this yesterday. V'chein ata mote b'chol makom she'Talmud kodem l'maaseh mipnei she'Talmud mevi l'idei maaseh v'eina maaseh mevi l'idei Talmud. Right. So you likewise we find in every place that study leads to action. Precedes action, because study brings you to action, and action does not bring you to study. Yeah. Now I just want to read one last thing before I have to stop, because I have to go teach someone else's son Torah. But look at footnote Gimel 2. Okay. L'lamed es atzmo. Haramam noket lashon zo v'lo lilmot. So the Rambam took this lashon of teaching and not learning, mipnei shemedubar b'chova limsor es haTorah ledor haba, because he's speaking about the obligation to transmit the Torah to the next generation. V'kan hu moser la'atzmo. Here he is transmitting the Torah to himself. V'ilu, however, chovas halimud ha'atzmi, the essential obligation of learning, ba'arak b'halacha ches. That comes in halacha ches. So we're not going to necessarily accept this theory hook, line, and sinker, but it is an interesting theory, which is that the whole first 7 halachos is about the chiyuv of Talmud Torah, like b'toras Masorah, like passing on the Masorah. And that's why the Rambam uses this awkward language of you have to teach yourself, Melamed es atzmo. And then in Ches, he'll talk about actual learning, not teaching. So that frames everything in a different way as well, which is that the father has obligation to teach his son, not because we value each person learning on their own, but because you have to pass on the Masorah, and that's the chain of the Masorah. It's first to your son, then to your grandson, then to other Talmidim. And that's also why it's Talmidim, But then there's a separate chiyuv of learning Torah, which is going to be, obviously related to the Masorah, but like it's a different character, Okay. All right, good. So I think tomorrow we are ready to go on. We've gotten as much as we can from this, but I think we need a fuller picture. Yeah. All right. Sounds good. All right, good. All right, see you. Talk to you later.